Keeping up with our motto that learning be a joy and teaching a pleasure, here we are with the remote teaching and learning process to bridge the gap. Happy learning, students! Today we are going to continue with Class 6 Science, Chapter number 8, our skeletal system and the skin. Topics that I am going to cover during this session are parts of human skeletal system, joints, and the structure of the skin. Human skeletal system is divided into two parts, axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Let us understand both these skeletons. Axial skeleton. It includes all the bones situated symmetrically along the central vertical axis of the body. Over here in this picture, you can see this is the central vertical axis, which is dividing the body, the entire skeleton, into two equal halves. So the bones that are situated symmetrically along this axis, they will come under the category of axial skeleton. For example, skull. Skull is divided into two parts. It is situated symmetrically. Half part is lying on the left side of the vertical axis and half part is lying on the right hand side. So skull is an axial skeleton. Similarly, the vertebral column as well as the rib cage, which is also called thoracic cage, they are the examples of axial skeleton. Even the laryngeal skeleton that is lying somewhere here, which connects the throat with the windpipe, it is also an example of axial skeleton. Appendicular skeleton. As shown over here in the picture, this is the central vertical axis, which is dividing the skeleton into two halves. Appendicular skeleton includes the bones which are lying on either side of the central vertical axis. Over here you can see the bones of arms and legs. A complete set of bones are lying on left hand side also, and a complete set of bones are lying on the right hand side also. So these kind of bones are included in the appendicular skeleton. Also, the bones of shoulder girdle and the pelvic girdle, they are included in appendicular skeleton. Here you can see both the types of skeleton. Let us understand axial skeleton in detail. Skull. Skull is the first part of the axial skeleton. It is formed by the bones of head and face. The bones of the skull are flat and strong. There are altogether 22 bones in the skull, out of which 8 are in the head and remaining 14 are in the face. The 8 bones in the head are called the cranial bones and the 14 bones in the face are called facial bones. Except the lower jaw, none of the bones of the skull can move. So skull is like a bony case in which the entire brain is protected. Now rib cage. Picture shows the skeleton of the rib cage. The cage-like structure in the chest is called the rib cage. In the chest there is one vertical flat bone that is called sternum, and 12 pairs of flat bones called the ribs. They are joined along the sideways over here. So 12 pairs altogether forms 24 ribs. So 24 ribs plus 1 sternum. So there are total 25 bones that forms the rib cage. It is joined to the spine at the back. And lungs and heart are very well protected inside this rib cage. The vertebral column. The spine is formed by padlock-shaped bones placed straight one above the other. You can see these are the padlock-shaped bones that are placed straight one over the other. There are altogether 33 bones in the spine. Each of them is called a vertebra. So we can say there are total 33 vertebrae. Vertebrae is the plural of vertebra. Out of this 33 vertebrae, different set of bones are given different names as shown over here in the picture. The spine protects the spinal cord that originates from the brain. In appendicular skeleton, there are altogether 126 bones, out of which 64 bones are forming the pectoral girdle and the upper extremities, whereas 62 bones are forming the pelvic girdle and the lower extremities. You can see over here in the picture, different names are there for different bones. Move the different parts of your body from the head to the toes and observe the different places at which they can bend or turn. The bones in our body are connected to each other by means of ligaments. This we have already seen in our previous session. So joints are the places at which two or more than two bones are connected to each other. Joints are of two types, movable joints and immovable joints. Movable joint includes the bones that can move. For example, the bones of arms and legs. Movable joint is divided into three types: ball and socket joint, hinge joint, and gliding joint. We will see all these three types of joint in detail in the coming slides. Immovable joints include the bones that cannot move. Example, bones of skull. Other than the lower jaw, all the bones are immovable joints. Let us understand different types of movable joints. Hinge joint. As the name itself indicates, hinge, it is a movable joint or the mechanism which you have seen in the door. Right? It allows the movement of the bones only in the one direction. And you can see over here the angle that is formed by the door. Right? It is 180-degree angle. So this type of joint allows the movement of the bones in 180-degree angle. On the right hand side here you can see a laptop is there. Right? So the movement of the flap of the laptop, it is also of 180-degree angle. Right? So the bone of the knee is shown over here. It can also make the movement of 180 degree. So knee, the bones which are there in the knee, it is an example of hinge joint, as well as the elbow joint. It also allows the movement of 180 degree. So elbow and the knee joint are included in hinge joint. Second is ball and socket joint. In this type of joint, the bones can move in two or more directions, and it allows the movement of 360-degree angle. Example, shoulder and hip joint. You can see over here in this picture, the shoulder joint, the movement of the shoulder joint is shown. It allows the movement of 360-degree angle, right? As well as the hip joint over here. It also allows the movement of 360-degree angle. So the bones of shoulder and the hip joints are the example of ball and socket joint. Here you can see the ball kind of structure is there and the socket is there in which this ball structure can be fixed. So that is why the name of this joint is ball and socket joint. Gliding joint. In this type of joint, the bones can only slide over each other. You can see over here in this picture. They are simply sliding over one another. Examples of this are wrist and ankle bones. The bone of wrist, here you can see the two bones, they are simply sliding on each other. As well as the bone of the ankle over here. Right? You can see the bones are simply sliding on each other. So these are the examples of gliding joint. The outermost covering of the body is called skin. Skin is very important and large organ of all the living things. The skin has hair. There are nails on the skin at the tips of the fingers and toes. The skin gives us the sense of touch. The skin is an important sensory organ of the body. So let us understand the structure of the skin. Human skin is made up of two main layers. The outermost layer is called the epidermis. Here you can see this is the epidermis. And the lower layer is called dermis. This lower layer is called dermis. Below the dermis, there is a network of blood vessels and the nerve fibers. The subcutaneous layer under this network maintains the normal body temperature. The epidermis has various layers and it contains the cells that produces pigments and protects our immune system. Dermis contains the nerve ending, oil and sweat glands and hair follicles. And the subcutaneous layer, it is made up of fat, connective tissues and large blood vessels. Picture shows the structure of skin in more detail. The very topmost layer is epidermis. You can see the hair coming out of this layer. The next layer below epidermis is dermis, which includes the sweat pores, the nerves, sweat glands, the hair bulb, and the veins and the arteries. Whereas the final layer below the dermis is the subcutaneous layer, or it is also called hypodermis. Here you can see there are tissues and some parts of arteries and veins are also there. Melanin pigment. A pigment called melanin is present in the cells of the epidermis. As shown over here in the picture, you can see this is the epidermis and the picture of this layer is enlarged and shown over here, which contains melanin pigments. And there are melanocytes that secretes the melanin pigments. The melanin is synthesized in certain glands, which are called melanocytes. The percentage of melanin decides the fairness or darkness of the skin. You can see over here, if there are more melanin pigments in the skin, then the skin will look darker. And if there are less melanin pigments, the skin will look light, that is fair. There are basically two main functions of the melanin pigment. It protects our skin and the inner parts of the organs by ultraviolet radiation, that is UV radiation, which are very harmful, by absorbing and scattering them. And melanin also gives the skin, eyes and hair their color. Sweat and sweat glands. When we walk or play in the sun, we get tired, but at the same time, our skin becomes wet. So this is because of sweat. In the skin, there are glands which secretes sweat and they are called sweat glands. In the picture, you can see different types of sweat glands which are shown over here with the help of blue color. Right? So these glands, it secretes sweat, which you can see it is coming on the top of the epidermis. This is the sweat pore through which the sweat is released on the upper layer of the epidermis. After playing in the hot sun or after hard physical labor, the temperature of the skin rises. So this sweat is released, which will help to reduce the temperature of the body. As we grow older, we get wrinkles on our body. Wrinkles are caused by the combination of factors. Some you can control and others you can't, which includes age. As you get older, your skin naturally becomes less elastic and more fragile. Decreased production of natural oils dries your skin and makes it appear more wrinkled. So here we complete this chapter. This is all about today's session. Thank you so much.